Chill here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and I want to talk about rape and the degeneration of the language. So, as Rahu, Chiron in Gemini, Mercury Aries, with Chiron going over that Mercury, the lesser known part of me is that I'm a linguist. And one of the things I noticed about myself, well, is first of all, when I was younger, I was so fascinated with the mistakes that people make in grammar when speaking in a language that's not their mother tongue. It was so fascinating for me, and I decided that I would like to study that in the future. And so when I actually learned linguistics, it was a department that was really worshiping Chomsky. Actually, the Lacanian perspectives I learned from filmmaking, because filmmaking was a language, and then I looked at mathematics as a language, and I looked at astrology as a language. And this is basically also the degeneration of astrology, of culture. Um, Now, and of course, programming languages. Remember the time where we hacked OkCupid and used it instead of a dating platform. By the way, YouTube was also supposed to be dating platform, but we did other things. And this is the beginning of this topic. Yes, ma'am. This is the beginning of this topic um, because gonna turn my votes down. This is the beginning of this topic. Now you're gonna hear an ASMR, and this is because um, the very rebellion of us users in YouTube or in OkCupid, we use these platforms not to date, but to converse with people from all around the world. And this is where basically the challenges to the language and the culture can also be noted, because there was a lot of traffickers in these platforms, and what you call a lover boy method. This is what caused the awareness of what later was called narcissistic abuse. It was traffickers, never narcissists, but these traffickers were tortured. Now, normally the people that would seek, whether it's other languages and so on and so forth, are already seeking something that is different. Not because they don't like what is, but there was also the awareness where one couldn't read a poem, whether it's from the classical, beautiful literature, mythical poetry. One couldn't listen to a song that would have something that does not negate the sense of wonder, love, and eroticism, that is not based on wounding as an origin wound. And even with the attempt to try to write this, I remember I was, I think, 12 years old when I was beginning to write in English, and I was saying, okay, but none of these things that with the stories around or the books around, none of them really have something that's actually loving. And I said, well, I cannot find even a place where I can connect with love. And when we would hear, even in the most elaborated form of language, when a person wants to tune inwards and live a good life, they basically, both as a creator, a poet, an artist, but also as a consumer of culture. Consumer is a very modern word. Whether they are in the elite or of the common people, they have to tune out of contemporary culture to tune inwards. And then the wound would cause that where either the literature was of the mythical or of what was considered in society the utopic. And then the dematerialization that is essential to rape culture. The rape culture in its essence is inherently dematerializing. It's not moksha, or what they Indians call moksha, but it's dematerializing in the sense that it negates life. And thus it dematerializes language. Now, as a person with Rahu in a Mercury sign, I'm actually materializing language. But to materialize language, we need to dematerialize rape. And think about languages where they have many words to snow. In our cultures, in Western cultures, we have many words to rape. Because that cannot be rape. This is, I don't know, loverboy method. That cannot be rape. This is work. This is sex work. That cannot be rape. This is, no, she's a whore. She's prostitution. He's whore. He's and so we have so many words for rape as the Nordic cultures have for snow. This causes a dematerialization of the language, because when a person seeks to dematerialize the rape from the environment, they have to stop listening to certain music, stop watching certain movies. But it's not being, but even when they turn to, some people turn to scriptures, they say, no, it's not about having no culture. It's about having culture that is not rapey. And that is the grand missing. You know, with Uranus and Taurus, there was a little bit of blooming of songs that are love that is actually loving. I'm good, so my life is good when I'm alone, but my life is better with you. All these healthy values. And then there was the looting of the love songs. The love songs about two people that shine together cease to be. Two people that drive together, this song cease to be. And it went hand in hand with campaigns like sex work is work. And of course people can't stand that. So they begin to dematerialize from this culture. But even when they, and then what happens, people begin to look, people tell them, yes, well, there is, I don't know, Amish community or religious community. So they open a book and they open the scripture. And then they see that the scripture is rape culture. And so this causes dematerialization of language also from the religious text. The cultural secular and the cultural religious. Now, what happens to a person like me that has a Rahu in Mercury sign in Gemini, which is linguistics? There really is.
סורוקה מיון, יצחק רגר.
And the calling is actually to materialize language. But what the Mercury is also alchemy, and then it's not just the words. It's also alchemical work of rapists. They try to interfere with the meaning of the words of people to make them dematerialize anything that is not rape. This causes a degeneration of the linguistic faculties. And this degeneration begins to give attention to the pre-linguistic phase. And this is where we are called as society to tend to the rape of infants that was a practice by the clergy and by the people that are the biggest decision makers that caused the linguistic faculties, while they did want people to be working people and thinking people, so they taught them the alphabet. But we need to dematerialize the rape of infants. And with that, a natural degeneration of the scriptures and the culture and the occultistic practices that are coming from the rape of infants. Is happening. This is what people call the burning of the books. תראי, את נתת לי כזו מחמאה, שגם אם זה לא היה נכון, אני חייבת לקבל את המחמאה הזאת. Opa. And so, מה? בבקשה. It's okay. Oh, it's okay. תרגישי טוב. So, when we talk about what people call the cultural revolution or the burning of the books, it's a dematerialization of language that is happening simply because of the origin of the wound, which was the rape of infants, by the people that taught people the alphabet. To curate speech impairment. I knew a person, when I was studying linguistics, with me there was a person who was accepted to curate speech impairments. And there was targeting of them because this person was raped in the past. And they were very intelligent. Their English was better than mine. Their actually the ability to express themselves was so amazing. I am a writer, and my mother is a writer, and my father was good in photography other than engineering. So when I say this, her lineage came from the mother was a chemist, the father I don't know, both academics. And it was obvious that such a girl, such a woman, will find curation and the connection between speech impairment to rape of infants. And so she was targeted, and she was raped, and she was raped out of her house. And they live from a well-off society. They lived in Omer, where was considerably, yes, not Beverly Hills, but people that are not poor. And she wanted to be, even though she had the CP, so she had disability, but she wanted to be independent. She's not the type where, but there was big attempts to keep her dependent. She tried to be religious, it didn't help. And so, even when people come to deal with the speech impairment that happens following the rape of infants, some of y'all may heard Ehud Barak, speech impairment, and he was indeed associated with Epstein, which means that as infant, but before he slept with 13 years old and thought that this is okay, he was that 12, 13 years old boy. And what he could channel, if he would sit in class, and it was difficult to concentrate, but if a teacher would ask question, then he would think a little bit about the answer and then answer. I have Mercury Eris. Mercury Eris can be a bit like that. Like we're difficult to concentrate, but then somebody asks a question, we think about it on the spot and we find the answer. And this is how and now, when people try to even curate the residues, which is, let's say, speech impairment, if a person is to become, let's say, public figure or politician, then immediately the connection between sexual boundary violation as infant and the speech impairment becomes prevalent. So in the beginning, they just normalized the speech impairment, which is important. But this is unsufficed. Because people then say, wait a second, there are cures for that, but the cures have to do with abolishing in society the rape of infants. And now, Uranus is 2 meters from ingressing to Gemini. Which means it's a societal planet is about to ingress to the linguistic sign. Uranus is about liberation from speech impediments, For example, if I think about Habermas, Habermas had a speech impediment, and his philosophical thinking was basically a basis to try to integrate what he saw as the juristic procedure in Judaism, which is lacking because there is rape in Judaism as well. Is probably the reason for his own speech impediment, but the Christian value of grace, and I don't remember what he took from Muslims, but he wanted to have he had a theory of discourse where each and every person should not only be listened to, but considered in the discourse. And this would be the solution to his speech impediment. That was his work with his Chiron Gemini. In academia, I was right before the Me Too. I was writing also an essay, very long essay, because my instructor gave us no limit for the pages, and and he read that PhD instead of an essay. And I was integrating roles with the veil of ignorance and Habermas. There's basically two polarities. One that would be about representation and acknowledging how different people come from different, and the other one would be putting the veil of ignorance and trying to consider a question at hand. If we can think about it in astrology as the Libra, which is balancing between points of view or balancing between identities, and Aries, which is each individual identity need to be considered, listened to, and considered in the discourse. It's not discounted and not excluded. So when we think about the generation of language, we understand that this is also the generation of philosophy, the generation of representation, and is stemming from rape of infants. If we take a look at the Epstein, the Epstein-Maxwell dossiers, which was a network of people. Epstein is a misleading name. And they infiltrated academia, the medical, the fashion, the cultural centers, and the political and economic centers. And of course the high-tech centers, which is also weapon industry. And this is where the generation of culture and language began. It's not just about eloquence or the richness in words. It's about an inflamed nervous system that also causes anomalies in weight. I really love the people that I see. I already saw people saying, you're not obese or underweight, you are inflamed. And this is very true. But also, you're not mentally ill, you are inflamed. But if they only address the food without the topic of rape, then the access to food sovereignty is degenerated as well. If they only address the rape, but not the food sovereignty, then whatever would be the implication of somebody that was raped would not be acknowledged in society. And what we are missing is the many points of interferences. So when we talk about degeneration of the language in society, the culture in society, we are understanding that the folks that have Rao in Mercury sign, particularly Rao in Gemini, or midheaven in Gemini, or ruler of their chart in Gemini, we are called to materialize language, and this can only be done by dematerializing the rape of infants. Now, when I talk about the rape of infants, what does it mean? It means that it is the infantilization of society. There was also degeneration when it came to the genitals. And a lot of people addressed it as mockery, but it's not something to mock at. Of course, that lineages where there is rape of infants, eventually the genitalia evolves to such that it's compatible with infants. I believe Slow and Bella addressed this. And the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, come on, because it was, let's say, Epstein. I say, oh, he has a small, I said, it's not about him having big or small dick, it's about him raping children. And then it's like, no, there's also actually a genetic degeneration that causes from generations of basically raping children. Um, and now all of these things, they have solutions. Is But the solutions, first and foremost, is about ceasing rape of infants and not infants. Only then language can materialize. So when you take your child to curating language acquisition issues or motoric issues, I also had motoric issues in childhood, and I was also targeted as infant. My parents did not rape me, um, but there were, I guess, occult practices around the country where I lived that were affecting infants. People in Carmen Gemini, particularly in the houses 4, 3, 8, maybe even 12, could have had those as a generation. Um, and there's also an issue of nervous system hack. When I was very young, I was painting. It was actually a Disney character, and I painted. Suddenly, I was channeling the painting, and it came out so beautiful. Then it was off, and I painted like a little child paints. Then my mother was so excited, she wants to show this to the teacher. And I said, Mother, the teacher would think I painted the small. Fortunately, the teacher thought I painted the small legs. Because what Disney is ritual abuse and torture of infants that later become celebrities. And yeah. Um, my mother never let me go to the gifted program. And so and she never let me skip a class. Not skip a class is not to go to a class, but to go, let's say a person is supposed to go to third grade, but they're already compatible for fourth grade or fifth grade. She never let me do that. And she said, psychologically, so you'll get along with the kids. I said, I don't get along with the kids. I'm weird, they're weird. I'm social, but they're weird. Um, and actually, a while ago, many of the gate gifted children began to remember things. Now think about it. Every child is gifted. And this is where, for language to materialize, and with Raoul Gemini, it is set to materialize. You're going to see that with the 2030 and the Ketu through Gemini, we're probably going to dematerialize a lot of languages. But also, people have to be cautious with what they call unity or one world religion, because they would need to abolish rape of infants so that the language can materialize properly. And they'll have to take into account the occultistic factors. Many First Nations lost their languages because the training of the two spirit included rape. And then the two spirit would have a dream that was broadcasted to them, and then they would go going through the male and the female and so on and so forth. Whatever one thinks, if this is good practice, not good practice, I don't know, but I think it's not bad practice to do the girl stuff and the boy stuff. But the problem was that they were raped. And when upon colonization, people lost languages, the names of the children. The castration of the people. And this is because the communication between two spirits was fundamentally rapey. And the two spirits, they were the doctors. They would be the person that would ask a person, did you sleep enough? Did you dance enough? Do you have a sense of community? And they would, their point would be to balance the male and female aspects. And they would say, oh, they would have hard life. Why? You think about it, if you take away rape, then it's some of the most interesting life. In fact, in places like Iceland, they began to grow children by exposing them to the activities. I think it is in Sweden, where they don't immediately give name to the infant, but actually wait for the name to emerge as the child grows. Now, even to some place, they don't even decide what the gender of the child is, but because they balance the activity, children are exposed to. Now, where there's no rape of infants, it can be wonderful. It is also allowing, you know, um, how should I say that? It doesn't make if entire it prevents wars, and if somebody has to fight, then they have both the ability to sustain and not be in excess war. But that with rape of infants is exactly the opposite. And when the people that are supposed to be the healers were raped, it eschews the entire system. On the one hand, yeah, they know how to treat people. That, do they? Because the treatment or in origin is to not rape the shamans and the healers. Now, religiously, how religions were spreading? By giving food to the poor and by making people poor. Because religions were intimately linked to raping infants that would make people mind controlled. And this is how religions were skewed to begin with. Now, I'm not against, how should I say, if there is a hypothesis of no rape of infants, no rape, no normalization of rape, and no tagging the people that were raped, then such faculty of thinking, belief, or religion can have great success. This is why people see so much effort done around the delay of the materialization of recovery from sexual boundary violence. They try to collapse the situation back to violence to prevent sovereignty. Because this violence is at the core of what prevents a people to be sovereign, free, safe, happy. And this also eschews our view of nature. Think about this. There is nothing more unnatural than rape. There's nothing more inorganic than rape. Rape negates the desire to make love, which causes not just depopulation, because rape does in itself, it doesn't cause depopulation. It causes oscillation that make an image that somebody has to control population. Even the many species that we see around us, that we say, look at nature. Oh, our kittens, they get pregnant every... Wait a second. How close are they to people? How do they behave? Dogs, for example, are not a natural species. Now, I'm not saying that nature It's kind of like, oh, we should all aspire to the idea of nature. No, I'm tending to this topic because there are many things that are justified by this is nature, where in fact it is the rape of nature rather than nature in itself. And it goes all the way back to, let's say, the Nordic people sacrificing a virgin to the sea monster. Now, they were trying to tame the North Sea. And then what happened? They would sacrifice a virgin to the sea monster, go to expedition in the North Sea. The sea is the sea. Then some of them would have an accident, and then they would torture women and say, oh, the women cursed that. Abolish rape of women. I remember when I watch Inuit channels, the daughters that grew up into a happy family and have children and so on, usually the father would teach the daughter to fish. And what we have is that the daughters and the sons would both have the skills. Now, when the people sacrificed virgins to the sea monster, who took over? The people with the crucifix. They were magnetized by the poles to the people that already sacrificed. It's so easy to integrate the apostles into the countries where people already sacrificed the feminine. In Ireland, why is it so easy to integrate in Ireland? They could literally lock women in the asylum that was a part of the church, and people just allowed this to be. They poison their potatoes. At first we hear about, I am my mother's savage daughter, I will not cut my hair, I will not lower my voice. But what we don't hear about was the Irish men that allowed this to happen to women. Wherever we hear discussions about modesty, we know that this is a nation of human traffickers. No matter what religion. Modesty usually refers to what? And this is also, and it's the most unnatural thing in the world, is resulting from rape of infants. Now, what does it happen when people try to, um, I don't know, excel the men and women that are not compatible with the standard of being raped or raping as participation in society? Many things begin to collapse. Because think about it, when people have a baby, if the baby is sick, a parent goes to the kindergarten, doesn't matter what their job is. And if the doctor doesn't know what to do, immediately the parents go and try to seek what to do. Then imagine society where the rape of infants goes under the radar. You don't need to imagine, you live in that society. We all live in that society. We need to imagine, so much so that we need to imagine a society where infants are not raped. And if infants are not raped, also adults are not raped. And also we don't have, sooner or later in 1-2 generations, we will no longer have sitting on the earth people that were raped as infants. And then what happens? The teeth of the children no longer rot because their parents ate unripe fruit, or the elders ate unripe fruit. It's in the Bible. But but if we read the scriptures, when we look at the scriptures, we see nowhere in the scriptures is mentioned something that is not rape. And then suddenly we have this line, the teeth of the children will no longer. And I know when Pluto comes to Aquarius, we are at this time and one of the most secular people you'll ever meet. The only reason I never joined the Masons because I knew nothing about all the weird things that happen. I was like, oh, enlightenment, it's all the cool philosophers and the people, the physicists and and child rapists are also uncommon people. But then they had women lodges, but they required to follow, to accept one of the monotheistic religions, and I think also Indian religions were okay. And I said, I'm so secular that I don't have problem with it. But they wanted to keep secret all the activities. And I said, no. Scientific endeavor is not something that is secretive. Something that's supposed to unify the world is not. Now, why are they persecuted? I say, but the core issue is that if infants are raped, then they try to put secrecy, and then if a person is already raped, it's like, what is their gnosis? But the antidote to the topic of child rape is actually language expression that doesn't normalize the rape of infants. It's the antidote to that secrecy. And this is why I did not join the Freemasons. um, more about this topic of materialization of language and dematerialization of language. Well, there are probably going to be people worried about the missing folks in NASA. How many of them are in the Epstein list and how many not? Now, usually the missing ones are the ones that didn't go along with something, even when that's a psyop. So, this is, how should I say? Of course, every person, when they speak about culture, about language, about science and religion, yes, of course, they risk speaking. Usually, the people that risk speaking cannot not speak. It's like they've already been exiled from the society that shuts up about rape of infants. And this is a society where to participate one has to enable rape. So they are the actual underdogs. But if there is one thing that's important to speak about, that's the one thing that changes everything, is this topic. And this is also leads to situations where a lot of religious places of religion are being closed, burned, temples and so on. But if we go back to the 20th century, where those were replaced by the age of ideologies, but none of those ideologies abolished rape, then we come to an unprecedented time where the logic for abolition of, let's say, religions, cults, and sects is so that there would not be rape. If that logic is not followed through, it brings the destructions of everything else that is also rapey. We've seen half of China is missing, gone, dead. I don't know why. I'm not saying it's coming from China, but one of the challenges that China had was that its dynasties were very patriarchal. Even the women that were equal had harems, which were basically built on energy siphoning. But then we see United States is not in a better situation. So we see something that is probably not as unprecedented as it looks from the periscope of the Western educated person, and that is both the East and the West collapsing. Now, anything global cannot be founded on rape. This is also why humanity does face an actual, genuine, authentic risk of going extinct, but also of going actually human, with or without technology. Think about the fact there's not a single algorithm for something not rapey, and just think about a concept called blue ocean. Zero rape life since infanthood is a blue ocean in the entire earth. So I want to turn to the people that could feel discouraged from what is being destroyed right now, where they see, oh my God, nowhere in the world is place where it's not, and it's not just women. It's men, and it's LGBTQ, and it's no gender, and multi-gender, and everyone. And so I want you to look around and say, what? But anywhere in the world, it means that this thing called no rape society literally doesn't exist. So this is, think of any product that you do with no rape is venturing into a blue ocean. And not only that, more and more people begin to understand that this is a necessity. You know, in the past, I could say, what am I going to say? Yes, I'm cuckoo. But in studies, is also over this. Okay, then what am I going to say? But he hurt me, he this, he doesn't. Let's look for the, here is, they do no rape courses for like genetics. Amazing. Oh, but all the people that think a person talks about sexuality, oh, there must be wild, there must be this, there must be that. I say, okay, really, if really nobody understands, it means that this is something new to humanity. And if having society that doesn't have rape is completely new to humanity, it must be where we're going. It must be the new world order and chaos. It must be where humanity is headed. It must be that reason that all the world is being destroyed. East and west, north and south. Because to fool all the people all the time is not possible. And this is exactly what they try to do right now. It must be that people stop looking for a Messiah and start saving themselves. It must be that there are millions of people abolishing rape from themselves and the environment right now. Not by not watching culture, but by having a culture that is not rapey. It must be that the people that enable rape are not able to access this timeline as much.